commission assembled with a lot of people tonight, so welcome. Since this is our official May monthly meeting, we normally start out with pledge of allegiance, so I'll ask them to stand. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So what we normally do is we'll open up for public comment at the beginning. If you have any comments on our agenda that we're, of the issues we're going to cover tonight, you're welcome to provide some input. We ask that you hold back on input until we're done. At the end of the meeting, we'll ask for additional feedback when we've covered. I will sometimes allow people that have input while we're talking about certain things to raise their hand. You know, if you really have to have something to say, I don't want to stop it. So the format is beginning and end, but I'm a little flexible. We just can't take a lot of time. So we'll try to finish this up. We normally take 2 hours for these meetings, so we'll probably go till 8:30. If you find it to be too exciting, you need to step out. There's no problem. I'm going to you to. We are going to be discussing the data centers tonight after we do our normal business. So that was our call to order. Public comments. Anybody have anything they would like to say, add, talk about? Connie.
So I want to make sure that when you work on this ordinance, that you're including the battery storage, the generator information, solar storage, and solar panels and disposals and all that kind of stuff. The total noise, you know, DBC, the DBZ, not because everybody just thinks it's DBA. Closed loop systems that has glycol in them, and they have to flush those out. You need to make sure that's all covered for all wastewater, how much treated water is being disposed of. Talk about the protecting of all the water wells, the residents' wells in the surrounding areas. There's all that ground vibration can cause those to collapse, as well as all the abandoned mines that are down there, underground mines down there, and industrial zone. This is where this is going to be permitted. There's a lot of that down there, so there's a good chance those are going to collapse too. So just something to keep in mind.
Okay. Anybody else? Well, I guess the next thing to do is we're going to approve the meeting minutes from Tuesday, June 30th. Everybody had a chance to look over those? Any comments, corrections, clarifications that are necessary?
I'll make a motion to approve them.
Second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, I think that's a unanimous. You're taking notes tonight? Yes. Okay, thank you. Here's the meeting minutes, new business, DCED multimodal grant application planning letter. All that up here. This is the map. So what this is, the township every year applies for multimodal grants for fixing our roads. It's one of our bigger funding components. We don't always get it. Last year, I believe, we did not get the multimodal, so we're trying again for 2027. Looks like we have Schmidt Road, which I've heard is one of the worst roads in the township right now, and this one is Crab Run. Yes. Part of Whitestown. What's the blue versus the orange? Just to delineate them?
There are different types of improvements on those roads. It's essentially what it is.
not. A little creepy. What is town? A little bit of that one. And up here on the little section, it's about half a mile. So tonight we're gonna recommend to the, we recommend to the supervisors that you move forward with that. Is that what we're doing, endorsing the letter?
You are, for the application, they require a planning document that is consistent with the comprehensive plan. So you're, as the planning agency for the township, essentially you're providing a letter indicating that this project will meet the requirements of the comprehensive plan, not so much of a supporting the application, but just to say that it's a necessary evil, it calls for improvements to roads and to fill that application. So that's really all that you need to do is provide a letter for the application to support that.
Okay.
Is the letter that was drafted suitable
Yes.
for its purpose?
And just for everyone's knowledge, it's looks like it comes to $3 million. Did I interpret this right, that PennDOT actually does the cost estimate on that?
They do through their municipal services program. They will review, determine the improvements and provide a cost estimate.
What do we give them?
And not,
Yeah,
that is a service that they provide to municipalities and other counties.
do we just tell them the limits of the road, we want to do these three, and then
They will review that road, they will determine what's needed, and they will put together a cost estimate. Whenever the township does paving, they will assist the township in preparing those specs.
So any of the state roads, Tom, the state handles all that independent of us, right? We can't-
Correct, but for the local roads, the state provides that service.
Okay.
Yes,
So no, we don't know anything about Route 19, what's gonna happen.
correct.
Okay, so this is the letter that I'll be signing, if we're all in agreement with it, so we covered the locations, we covered the cost. You all had a chance to look at it, so.
Yep.
Is that letter on the website? I'm curious, is that letter on our website?
Not yet, it's basically still a draft. Once it's final, they can post it.
It'll be part of the application, if it gets uploaded, and that will be available.
I move that we approve the letter and the project.
Okay,
I'll second that.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, unanimous. Okay, so the next order of business is to work on the data center. Okay. We're not going to get into the PRD. So at the supervisors meeting last week, they and at the workshop prior to that, they did ask us to work on the data center ordinance. They'd like this done by the 25th of August. So they're putting some pretty high priority into us having a draft for them. We did work on this a little bit back in probably February, March. Bob shared some of the work we're currently on that. In the meantime, we've got a lot of examples from different sources. Bailey, I think you're from provide us with a copy.
Yeah, and that wasn't intended as a model so much as there were some highlighted areas just to bring to your attention to focus on, mainly with the power supply, which is a big issue that I want to focus on. So that'll just kind of highlight key points to insert into other documents. I noticed that one of the samples that got sent around it looked like a shortened version of the Penn Future model ordinance. I don't know if it came from, Penn Force or somewhere.
We started with Penn Future and then
Yeah.
edited that and then edited it again. So the version you have probably doesn't have, it's probably not the most recent, if it's what Tom sent. There's one version
I just
newer.
saw the email with the most recent version.
Oh, okay.
I was gonna say that shortened version that was shortened from Penn Future's
Mhm.
original. I was gonna say use that one to work in your blanks. It was a really good start. I do have some notes of areas I would like to beef up.
On the updated version of the short one you're saying, or
Mostly
the original short?
the shortened one that I had. I'm just now going over my email, the latest you sent.
Okay, because that latest one filled a few of the voids.
Yeah, I see that here. That they're still
Okay.
adding.
Okay.
Are you aware of any of the state kind of motions to put a temporary moratorium on hyperscale?
Yeah, so there's actually a handful of bills out right now. They kind of address different things. One is there's actually two moratoriums right now that are in the process of being considered. The first one is a similar 18-month moratorium, and it is really to give municipalities a chance to do what we're doing here. The other one is a larger 36-month moratorium, and that is specific to hyperscale data centers. And that one has a little bit more pushback just because of the extreme length. There's some constitutionality issues with that, and previous states have gotten into trouble with similar time frames of that length. But those are the two moratorium ones that are kind of in the process now. I do have high hopes for all of the legislation though, just because it's a kind of a comprehensive effort among everybody. I think one of the most impactful are not even the two moratorium ones, but the grid legislation that will actually address a lot of the issues that we would want to address here anyway. That goes to a lot of the power supply and infrastructure concerns that really have the biggest impact. So I think there's 4 or 5 different bills out right now, but they've all gotten a lot of support. The 18-month moratorium bill, it got delayed a little bit just because it started in the House, went to the Senate. The Senate amended it, and so now it has to basically restart the process. But it won't get any pushback with the amendment. It was a pretty simple amendment. In my honest opinion, I think they probably need to add the amendment. It would have gone through quicker, but that one is just a little bit delayed because of that. It'll have to go through the whole process again. But I suspect that all of them will eventually make their way through, hopefully within the next year, actually.
And the state was also working on a model ordinance.
Yes, that's one of the bills. Also, is they want, similar to how the like stormwater and erosion did a model ordinance per county. It was kind of like a trickle down adoption effect. They want to do something similar with the data center ordinances.
Any time frame?
No, can't give you that. Can't give you
So
that.
if we can't get it by August 25th, I mean,
Yeah, you're not gonna get it by August 25th. I can't tell you that.
depends on the year. Okay. Well, thanks for that. I know there's a lot of states that are moving with moratorium.
Yeah.
And then Trump has the.
And it would actually, so because it's kind of a double up of what we're doing here, it was specifically added in that legislation that doing this if we did this now, that we would have another chance to go back and update. It would kind of give us a second chance, another go around at it. So you don't use up your moratorium just because we did this process.
Well, I think what's nice with where we're at in the process here is, hey, I can hear myself. Soon we won't be able to breathe in here, it'll be too hot, but that's okay. I guess what's nice about doing this as a standalone is it gives us essentially a trial run at this, because as you know, we're working through new zoning and Saldo as well. So anything we mess up right now, we're gonna fix in the Saldo, because this is gonna be incorporated, not the Saldo, into the zoning ordinance, because it's gonna be incorporated into the zoning ordinance in the next several months as the new zoning ordinance comes into play. So it gives us a nice dry run of the whole thing and fix the issue in the interim at the same time. So even if we're not perfect this go around, it's good enough to get us where we need to be.
It gets you a nice solid footing.
Yep, that we then
at
can
least
tune.
you have something.
Yes.
Some sort of protection on it.
Yeah, so we have something, and it gives us an area that we can then retune as well as we go to the zoning ordinance and fix any holes. So I'm fine with that kind of an approach anyway, because as I mentioned before, it's like running with your buddy through the woods being chased by a bear. You just have to run faster than the other guy. And as long as we are that township that's running faster than the other guy and getting something in place, we're probably going to be well ahead of the game as we continue to refine.
I think back in March, we wanted to take a conservative position to some respects and try to incorporate the most prevalent items in each.
Conservative, but enforceable.
That's
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need to make sure that whatever we write is enforceable.
Yeah, that's the biggest issue you're gonna run into with is if you were too heavy-handed, then you just open yourself up to exclusionary challenges.
And you can probably answer, if certain areas of an ordinance are challenged, how likely is it that other areas then just are ignored because they want to challenge in certain areas?
I would say that's 50-50. Kind of depends on who's challenging it. Some people will ignore others. Other people will use it as kind of an opportunity to hone in on others. So that really depends.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
One thing is we're limiting these data centers to our industrial zone.
Currently, to give people a refresh, where we started this a few months ago, and we proposed an ordinance. Well, we started working on a draft of a proposed ordinance. We started from Penn Future's model ordinance. And then we took a few things away and added a few things to it. And we're trying to add enough to it that it's comprehensive enough across a broad spectrum of areas. That was all done back in February and March. At that time, what we were proposing is that this be done as a conditional use in the industrial zone. And that's the only place that we were going to propose it. I don't think there's any issues with that.
No, that's what we decided then.
Okay.
Not with me. I just, there's a lot of folks that are interested, and so, I'd like to help them understand what we're looking at and the direction we're going. I believe the industrial areas here off of East Lancaster Road. Tom, can you help us with that?
Yeah.
I have it. It's not very big, but it's a lot easier to see it on this map than it is on the township map. So this is.
How much of the industrial area is already in use? Is quite a bit of it, or is there still a fair amount of open ground?
There's a lot of open ground, but it's private property.
Okay.
It's owned by private landowners, whether or not they're going to be agreeable to sell to a data center, I don't know. That's the area that we designate.
Can't remember.
But what's actually important is that we make sure that there is enough area in that zone that somebody could come in and buy a piece of property and make this work. Because if we write this thing so tight that there is no way someone could come in and buy something, we will end up being challenged. That's an easy challenge.
Yeah, so that's one of my first comments here on this, with the minimum lot area that we want. You want to make it a large minimum lot area so that, you're working with a decent sized piece of property. If you make it too large, these lots here only have so much to work with, and one of them is actually already split. So I looked at the GIS map yesterday. I printed out for Michelle because she was looking to be here, and I did the math on all the lots and the acreage. And actually with this 25, it does concern me because I think that only gives you 1 or 2 actual spaces within this entire zoned area.
Well, it gets more concerning than that. Because if you do the simple math on the setbacks,
That's the
they
other
become
thing.
more problematic. If you go with the 800-foot kind of setback, which is one of the numbers that's been batted around, 800 feet is essentially, if an acre is approximately 200 by 200, that's 4 acres deep to get to the center of the property. And if you need a 4-acre setback in the front, 4 acres in the back by 4, you're at a lot of space. You're at 8 acres deep by 8 acres wide to put a pin in the middle that could be a data center. So you're at a 64-acre minimum size with an 800-foot setback. I think that is a big area of issue given where we're allowing this.
Yeah, I was looking at the setbacks. I think it would be more effective to lower that minimum lot area from 25 to, and then increase the setback. I would rather have a larger setback and a little bit smaller of a minimum lot, because if you change the minimum lot, it makes it look like there's a lot more opportunity. So like if you're looking at area you want to develop and you say, I have a 25 area minimum lot, you immediately know you're only gonna have 1 or 2 chances. So that right there's a red flag. If I lower that minimum lot area to 10, it makes me think, oh, that's easier. Doesn't mean I'm gonna get that area, but it does make it seem more attainable.
But the problem is, as soon as you read the 800-foot setback, and anyone does the simple math on it, they know you can't do it on 10 acres or 25 acres. You're at 64 acres minimum.
Well,
And that's a problem.
I think when we debated some of the items, the key items here, the minimum lot size, 10 acres was kind of talked about. Then we talked about 2 levels of setbacks. One is to a sensitive
receptor,
which is very extreme. If there's someone has a well or some type of school, or but I mean, and then the 200-foot was a classic setback that we found in researching 6 or 7 model ordinances across Pennsylvania.
So I would say,
So it was tighter than
a lower regular setback, and then not just sensitive receptors. One of the other comments where we have, you have a setback whenever you're at a boundary of a residential or agricultural or sensitive receptor. I would actually broaden that to be any differing zone or sensitive receptor. Because also, I mean, you already have.
You want that buffer.
Oh yeah, and you already have a rule for the conservation district boundaries as well, which I think is at like 150. I would go ahead and just include all other zoned areas. That way you're not, worried about, walking a line anywhere. And if you see like all the different surrounding zones, you might as well go ahead and protect all of them, not worry about whether it's residential or not. Residential, agricultural, conservation, whatever is there, you give them a significant amount of protection. And then if you want a smaller one for when they're abutting another industrial, have at it. You can make that one a little bit lower, and then you're kind of at a happy medium.
I think Groff and Insight are up there. Is that the 2 businesses?
Definitely Graph, yeah.
Groff, not Groff.
And if you increase your setbacks, if you increase your setbacks, you can also beef up your actual buffer requirements, which is not just your buffer zone, but what you put in that buffer, which is one of the areas of that model ordinance. I think you should add a little bit more. Just beef it up a little bit so that you're adding extra protection between any lots.
So if a data center company would come to look at Lancaster Township, we would be very low on their list, because we just have
hopefully, if I was a data center, I wouldn't choose this here, because when you're a data center, you're kind of looking at, one, you want some close and some heavy duty infrastructure to tie into so you're not too burdened. You also want to be really near high population and high business activity areas, because that's a lot of what you're serving, and it just makes things a lot easier. And if I'm a data center, I come in here and I'm looking at what property I can buy, my opportunities for expansion. I'm already pretty limited. I got a really tiny little district in here. surrounded by agricultural and audubon zones. So it's already not super attractive.
Is it challengeable? If we allow multiple parcels in that space that were suitable for our definition of a data center,
I think you can get away with this area. I don't think, I would argue against, we don't need to remap or, rezone anything to make our area larger. That's what it is, it's what it has been. We aren't trying to make it smaller to keep data centers out. It's just the fact that this is a rural community, we're protecting that kind of land. And there's a lot of places to do that, and that's kind of understood. I think it would be different if we were rezoning and made the area smaller, because we were doing this, but I think the fact that it's already existed, it's always been small. It's been small for all the industrial uses. No reason to have to increase it.
Okay.
But that's what I would play around with your minimum lot area to make that more possible.
But without doing anything now, someone could theoretically come in here now, buy a 200-acre farm, a nice flat 19, and argue with us about putting a data center in.
Well, they can't now, and I'll tell you why. Because at the last meeting, we had them do the declaration.
But ignoring that,
They
could have. They could have. Okay.
That's a part of the reason we started the process, because it does offer us some protection while we work through the process.
Okay.
And we were also trying to exclude on-site power generation.
So you do not want to do that.
Okay.
It's actually encouraged that there is on-site generation. Now that's different than primary generation. All of the data centers are gonna have some form of backup power. They're gonna have a primary and a backup in case, if you tie into the grid and the grid loses power, they're gonna want something to keep them going. I don't wanna say you don't, but it would be incredibly difficult and burdensome, and not just aesthetically, but infrastructure-wise, for them to do a primary power generation on site, because they take so much power. They're gonna have to build an entire power plant, there's just not enough area there to do that. So you don't really want that kind of thing going. You don't want those kinds of on-site generation. You do want on-site backup generation to help offset, because one of the concerns whenever data centers start moving in is the burden on your infrastructure. And a lot of times they come in and they say, well, other customers aren't going to have to pay for that because we're gonna pay the initial, set it all up so that we have the actual serving infrastructure. The problem with that is data centers require so much that it's the operation and maintenance that it's like it touches all the areas of the system. You're going to have to do upgrades, you're going to have to do more maintenance, and it's billions of dollars of costs, which ultimately do get spiraled out among customers. Just like if we're talking about a sewer authority, a developer comes and says, I'll build your mainline extension, other customers aren't paying for it, I'll build that mainline, but if that development overhauls your treatment plant, you gotta upgrade your treatment plant, those treatment plant upgrades go out to the entire customer base. So you want on-site power generation to an extent so that you can help offset some of that burden. You want them to produce some of their own power. You want to be careful though, because a lot of those generation methods are also nuisances in a way. If they're going to be fossil fuels, kind of diesel generator, you're gonna have to pay attention to your air quality and emissions. You want to have an emission standard for them if they're going to do diesel. If you're going to do solar, for them to create a significant solar generating system, they would have to use a lot of land. They might do some, so that's why I was asking, do we have a solar ordinance? And we have the alternate energy ordinance to help kind of regulate those uses as well. So it's kind of a balancing of letting them, so if that makes sense.
No, it did. We actually built behind the meter power plants, my company. So.
In regards to, go ahead.
My concern as a resident is water.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. If we can regulate utilities such as electricity, tell them we can't, generate power. Can we require, and I think we can, that they use, public water for the water source? They cannot use our groundwater.
Yeah, you want to try to avoid private groundwater use as much as possible. If we can, we want to avoid that.
When you look at how the percentage of people in Lancaster Township who have wells, and I hadn't even thought about the possibilities that Connie mentioned earlier, what that could do to everyone's well. And one of the reasons we moved here was because we didn't want to be forced into public water. And now that's a possibility. Very pleasant.
Do you have a question, comment?
But even for the public waters, that's problematic because last fall, American Waters asked residents to not use water for the gardening anymore because we were obviously running out of water. And now if the state is investing so much, I think it sounds like it's impossible that public water would be sufficient for them.
The draft ordinance examples that we looked at said that the power company or the data center would have to get assurance from the water companies that they could meet their needs. And they would have to be, they would have to come with their permits to build it. They would have to show that the water company can meet their quantities. And that's a reasonable requirement.
And if they use groundwater as a source, that they do a study and they do all impacts and all that stuff. Those are in some of the model ordinances too. So, a lot of the data centers that I'm working with are moving to closed loop systems where they use glycol.
Yeah, but they're not what they're saying they are either. They're lying about that through the feed.
So the
I think
closed loop
Ireland,
systems.
is trying to get to a no public water use.
So the closed loop systems, the benefit of those is that they use far less water than an evaporator system. Evaporator is the worst, but it's the most electricity efficient. Closed loops require a little bit more electricity, but they conserve a lot more water. They still use some water, but there's also a lot of concerns with closed loop systems and honestly any of the water usage. Just because you're trying to watch so many different aspects of their operations. So for one, closed loop systems kind of go into those guys that they aren't going to have any waste or discharge, but that's not true. It'd be almost impossible for that to actually happen. So you want to be careful. Like that's part of the reasons. One of my other notes is I want to beef up the actual wastewater discharge provisions, and not so much. I mean, a lot of the provisions too, you're going to have that they need to submit all of this evidence and all of these plans, but it also leaves room for tailor fitting, and whenever we actually receive an application to look at the details and do a balancing act of what's going to be the most beneficial or the least harmful. Because it's not always a one size fit all. Like somebody asked me, should we demand closed loop systems? No, because there might be a better alternative. There's like a direct chip cooling, whatever it's called, that's more conservative for water. Again, higher electricity, and it's also why you don't want too many bright line rules of what you have to have is required and what's not, because you don't want to trap yourself when you get an application that's really just showing you all of the feasibility studies and all the data. You have a little bit more room to look at that analytically and say, okay, this is what we're practically looking at and realistically what it's going to do to the community. And then you can kind of make your determinations based on each individual one. So that's kind of why it's not always a clear-cut quantitative number written somewhere, because you are doing a balancing act with a lot of different things. And if you choose a different operating system, you might have different discharge, and so it's because you're trying to monitor so many different aspects. It's just, we try to as being comprehensive as possible, but it's a lot of work to keep track of all of it. And it's a hard job, but I do think it's necessary. And for the wells, that's why we have so many well provisions, is because the groundwater, the other private water systems, they are at such a high risk. Again, with all of your infrastructure, whether it be electric or, your water utilities, there's going to be an increased burden. And
So
it's
gonna be an
increased burden on the system as a whole. Unfortunately, there's not too much, so like for the power companies, they're not allowed to tell data centers no. They're not allowed to tell them we can't handle this, and you're not allowed to connect. That's part of one of the points of the pending legislation is, should we allow them to say no, you cannot connect because we can't handle this? With the public water, it's better as a whole, for them to be connected to the public water, but there's still, some detrimental effects that you're gonna have to be monitoring. And so then again, we go back to kind of the dual system of what kind of methods can they come up with to make it the most efficient, any contributions they're willing to make, or, anything they're gonna try to do to offset their impact on us.
Tom, do we have public water out there? I don't know. Like,
Not on these Lancaster.
so like if we were to say,
County over 19,
so if we couldn't require them to have public water, we don't have public water, right? Is that correct? Like in our ordinance, we wouldn't be allowed to, because that would be challenging.
Well, why? We required, for example, if you wanted to do, say, a PRD or something, and there's no public water,
So if you build it,
you have to extend the line.
If you make that happen, you can do it. If you extend the line.
Yeah.
I'm sure they'd be willing to do that.
Yeah.
You still run into the problem of, the actual infrastructure kind of burden that happens on the other end of that, kind of like what I mentioned with the sanitary sewer, you have something similar there.
Well, but
If they're willing to build.
actually, I do want to correct you on the sanitary sewer side of that as well. I own a sanitary sewer company, and that burden is not on the residents.
So,
Capacity.
I don't want to say private systems.
No, this is public, PUC.
No, so not
PUC regulated.
Not public utilities. I'm talking about municipal authorities.
Municipal authorities are a little different, correct.
That's who I represent, so
Right.
that's why
Okay.
I was speaking.
Municipal authorities are different, but somebody like PA Water, for example, capacity, whether they own sewer or water, that capacity still has to be purchased by whoever's using it. So if they need to build bigger treatment plants, or if I need to build an additional treatment plant to handle additional sanitary, that burden is on the developer. It does not get back to the rate base paying customers in any way.
Yeah, and so we actually do something similar with municipal authorities, is that you do pay for capacity in a sense. And whenever you are kind of offshooting off to other customers, is for the actual operation and maintenance to maintain that capacity that you're handling. And again, like if you're gonna upgrade your treatment, and a couple years later you do a new Act 7 study, that capacity calculation gets averaged again. And so they do end up going up. So that's kind of that's how my brain was kind of categorizing that, and that's the best way I could explain it for like the power. I don't work for any electricity company, so I don't know exactly how the technicalities there work. But that's how my brain was kind of computing that along with my municipal authorities, and how they handle their charges.
Well, one of our clients, American Electric Powers, were getting killed by the data centers coming in, getting in the queue, and then making them do all this work, and then all of a sudden they disappear.
Yeah.
So now they're making them commit the funds to at least move forward with the project.
Yeah, you're seeing a lot more contribution requirements, and that's not just for electricity, but contributions for community upgrades, or ecological projects, conservation projects, aquifer refurbishment. It could any of the sorts to kind of pay for your cost on a system.
But I don't know if First Energy does it somewhere.
Well, First Energy does go and have developers, whether it's residential developers or commercial developers, they do pay for the infrastructure upgrades necessary to make those changes happen. Whether that means that addition or change in transformers, whether it means running 3-phase, whatever it is, those are paid for by the developer. I know firsthand.
Yeah, but and it has to get approved by PJ and the electric district that manages all the grid.
So legally, we could require them to have public water.
Yes, so thank you for explaining all the details. So I have something, so if I understood correctly, the energy provider is not allowed to restrict the energy to a customer. But in Maryland, I heard that the new strategy is that they put in an ordinance that no business can use more than such and such amount of electricity.
You could try. The problem with that is if I say you can only use so much electricity. Data centers inherently need so much power that they could, in theory, challenge it by saying, I'm not allowing them to operate. I've restricted them to the point that they can't exist here. And that's what we want to avoid. We want to discourage as much as possible, but not to the point of where it's clear that they could not exist. Because if they can't exist here, we're in trouble.
Oh, that's why they put it in as a separate ordinance and they generalized it for all businesses. And that's what they started in Maryland. I just followed it because they started trying to fight back.
And so just because it's in a separate ordinance doesn't mean that, because it being in a separate ordinance, but it still applies to you, it's kind of like a stacking effect. So you can't say, well, it's not a zoning ordinance, and it's not, in our zoning regulation on data centers, so it's not, that's not what we're doing. If you can build a case to show the stacking, you could be challenged. It'd be harder.
It doesn't, I mean, in the worst case, we would lose the ordinance, right? But it doesn't have any other effect on the township, other than using
the township gets, if the township got sued. That's kind of what I want to avoid.
Yeah.
As the attorney, I want to avoid.
Is it expensive?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and if you
Suits
lose,
are very expensive.
and if you lose, this is actually what happened in and I think Texas ran into this with a lot of their moratoriums. They overstepped and they pushed too hard, and so data center developers started suing because they have a lot. They have more money than us, and they won. So then not only were they allowed to do what they wanted, but the municipalities had to pay them.
And their lawyers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I like to err on the side of caution to avoid any suit.
Oh, so it would go into a real court.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Just to put the power in perspective for the public, a large data center takes 750 megawatts or a gigawatt of power, and that's equivalent to running the city of San Francisco all the time. That's one data center.
I read in the news that in greater Pittsburgh area, the residents have to pay $200 to $300 more in electricity bill already, just because there was a discussion about putting data centers in, and they are upgrading the net already.
Well, I think there's a lot of legislation to reverse that and make the data centers pay.
The reason you see an increase before you see anything else is because the power companies are the first people to get any application of interest from a data center. Because they're going to submit interconnection applications, anything like that. And so as soon as the power company gets their first win of this is coming here, they start getting into gear. Because if a data center just moves in, it takes so long for the grid to meet that. So they have to start as early as possible. So they're already planning on making upgrades. They're doing whatever they can because they're the first person that caught that application. They know it's coming. So that's why you see them moving a little bit before everybody else. So that's part of the reason. And then their costs go up. And that's all across the country. You've seen, I think in last year there was a larger electricity bill increase per household than there had been in the last, I don't know, I want to say 10 years or something. Don't quote me on that, I can't remember for sure. I was reading that probably a few weeks ago, but it was, and they were all like, we've gotten so many more data center applications. Even though those data centers haven't been built, some of them may never get built because, you know, they dry up and move somewhere else. But those are just, that's the grid trying to stay ahead as much as they can.
Okay, I'd like to rein in this conversation.
Sorry.
Okay, let's set a few parameters here is what we want to do. We have 3 meetings in which this one, Monday night, and then a month from now, in which to have an ordinance in place, it's the goal, to then say, yep, we recommend this to the supervisors for their consideration as an ordinance. In light of doing that, I think what we want to accomplish is we need to set some goals for what we need to do. What I'd like to accomplish tonight is to go through, and I'm actually proposing we start with the one I sent around today. And we go through that and hit the whole thing, not in detail, but hit everything in it to identify where are we weak, what are we missing in this, and if we know some parameters we want to fill in the blanks, fine, we can fill them in as we go. But take this and make sure that we've covered the areas we need to cover in this ordinance, and if not, what kind of thing do we need to be talking about, whether it's ground vibration or something else that we need to have inserted in here. Get something started on each of the weak spots. Come back Monday night at the workshop, continue to work on that and refine those areas that we've now added in so that after Monday night, we have some kind of a template in place that has most of what we want. We might be arguing over a few parameters or metrics that we're going to measure, but at least we've got something then that people can consider for 3 weeks before the meeting on which it's going to be voted on.
Good tact.
That's what I would like to see us do tonight. There's a lot of great discussion here. I don't want to, we could go on all night with discussion, but discussion doesn't get us an ordinance. Discussion just talks around the points. I'm still a firm believer in this does not have to be perfect. We need to get something here that's reasonable and enforceable. And if we do that, that will accomplish 99% of what we want to accomplish anyway. And the rest will take care of itself as we fix it in the zoning ordinance. Okay?
Sounds good.
Some agreement on that? Okay, good.
I think the discussion earlier that we just had was very helpful.
Yes, thank you.
For myself, for the residents to understand some of the things, the challenges we're dealing with, but I agree, we're eventually got to cut it off and move forward with revising what we started with. I think we can use a lot of that background information to modify this.
We can, and I want to draw on those other documents that were sent around to make sure what are we missing, or how can we measure what it is we want to enforce, because we need to measure it to enforce it. And that's one of the problems I had with some of the other ordinances. They were fuzzy language about, you don't want to do this, but there's no way to measure what this is. So it's not very enforceable. To be honest, I'm not real excited about going over the first page of that document, definitions. To be honest, I really don't care.
Yeah, the definitions are really
I think that I think we will let you and your firm clean up some of that language for us. And I'm also not interested in going over the wrapper language to turn this into a standalone ordinance. Because clearly this is just the content. There's got to be the other pages of stuff saying the supervised, approved, blah, blah, blah. All the wrapper language to make this an ordinance, again, we'll let you and
don't worry
do
about
that.
any
Exactly.
formatting or structure or anything like
Correct.
Well, the one thing we did add was the data mining and cryptocurrency.
We did. We added data mining,
So that's kind of this
cryptocurrency.
whole class of definitions for data.
Yep. So we added data mining, cryptocurrency mining. And we talked about server farm definition, but we didn't do anything there. And again, whether we need to or not is going to depend on some of the languages we move
Which
forward.
I thought it was healthy to add more.
Yes.
In the other example we had, and we slide this over because I had this battery energy storage systems, another definition, and that's outlined in blue.
Yeah, that's good. That's,
It's interesting is they prohibit use of lithium and lithium.
I saw that.
I wasn't quite sure why. But it seemed pretty strong about that, so that's probably another one we ought to add to these definitions.
Okay. So moving to, and again, some of what we've got there, this would be page 3 of the document that is in front of you. This was crafted with the intent of it being a piece of the zoning ordinance. So where it says after crematorium and things like that, clearly that's, the wrapper language will put all that in context. You don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. So let's see. I thought the definition that we came up with the last time on that beginning of that data center and data center accessory use seemed fine, unless someone needs to modify anything there. And again, this is broad brushstrokes tonight. I want to hit the whole thing because we've got such limited time to do it.
you on A22?
Yeah, A22.
You raised, I forget your first name.
Bailey.
Bailey. You raised the concept maybe the sensitive receptor could be a conservative conservation zone, maybe?
I would leave this how you have that first part, the sensitive receptor shall be defined as, I would leave that there. My point to that was whenever we have setbacks against boundaries, and it's usually like all the models say, you know, if you're residential, agricultural, or within X amount of feet of a sensitive receptor, instead of doing it individually like that, I would actually make it that regardless of residential, agricultural, any differently zoned district and or sensitive receptor. Sensitive receptor will probably automatically get included in there. Doesn't hurt to have it, you know, specifically in there. I would just, instead of, you know, doing R1, R2, R3, and agricultural, just any differing zone district to protect everybody.
We actually, we'll get to that when we get to 6 down below A6.
Yeah, that's a little bit further. So that first little red spot, that's fine, that can stay.
So Bailey, you had a comment on A1.
Yes.
Minimum lot area of 25. Personally, I don't care if we want to change that. If you think it's more enforceable lowering it, I'm fine with that because, again, I think there's going to be enough other stuff in here that's going to.
Yeah, I do too, and that's also why I'm not concerned about lowering it. I think it's far more of a risk than any protection it would realistically.
And you're thinking in the 10 range?
I would be okay with 10. I need to look at these actual lots a little bit closer to the 100%, but for right now I'd say 10.
In a comment for the residents, this doesn't mean that we're trying to encourage them to come in little areas. That doesn't mean that at all. What it means is that even though we've got a low number, there's so many other protections in place that in practice, they actually won't succeed at doing it anywhere near on that size. But that we would not have excluded them because of the size.
Now, we did a benchmark against other ordinances across Pennsylvania, or I did, or we did, and some don't require a minimum one. They're open, but they use the setbacks and the other provisions to limit, like where can you put it in this plot. So you're not being, you know, say there's a numerical standard. Mm-hmm. And that might get you between the 10 and 25 anyways, so it might put you in that box anyways.
There's 13 properties in the industrial zone. 7 of those are essentially greater than 10 acres. There's only 3 that are greater than 25. So I was just going to say a limitation. So it's just too few. 10 is questionable, but I think that's still a good number to go.
And I think one of them is even split zone.
Right.
Yeah.
I was going to say I think we should do 10 because if we're limiting them to larger tracts and they don't really exist in the industrial zone, they're going to say we have a defective ordinance. If there's plenty of 10-acre tracts, we'll have, like Bob said, we'll have to just, you know, put the framework in that, you know, holds our residents and community to the safeguards.
Okay, moving to A2, maximum height. Tom, do you know what our maximum height is in industrial?
Is,
I believe it's 50.
And then question for you, Bailey. Given this is going to be standalone, we currently reference this as in the applicable zone. Should we leave that, or should we put a number in here instead?
No, so it will be for your applicable zone, so it would still technically be subject to your industrial.
Understood. But in terms of writing this as a standalone, do you recommend we do it that way and leave the language the way it's written here?
I would leave the way it's written here because
Okay.
you just want to be more specific for specific uses. And then whenever I write the actual ordinance, I will put in a little phrase that says, you know, you're subject to everything, but wherever there may be a conflict, this
Okay.
falls.
Okay.
it is 50 feet.
50.
It's currently restriction.
And that's pretty consistent with,
Yeah, I don't think 50.
benchmarks across the state.
Yeah, I don't think 50 is out of line and would cause us an issue. It's lower than several would want to be, but I don't think it's problematic. Do you?
I have a slight concern about it just with the roof equipment.
Yeah, I think Mike Bilden had a 45 foot.
45,
He had
15.
45 plus 15,
Plus
putting in at
15.
60.
That gives you your roof
I
assessment.
like 60, to be honest. But again,
That's 4
we
stories.
can balance other things if we want. If we're leaving them ample enough space, because a lot of times, so like if you're gonna close them in this way, you gotta let them go up this way. If you're gonna let them come out this way, you have a little bit more flexibility to limit them there.
So we have to modify our ordinance?
No,
Oh,
I would just change it here.
oh, be specific.
We can be specific, yeah, we can certainly do that.
45 plus 50, the roof.
What do people think here?
You could just do
We could just make it 60 and be done with it.
60, because it already
Inclusive.
says it's
Inclusive.
inclusive of roof mounting equipment, and that gives you your extra 15 to 10.
So-
So your actual building is only like 40, 45.
What do you guys think? Move to 60 then?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Maximum individual building size not to exceed 80,000.
Those
Any,
are 2 new ones?
these are the ones that
Yeah, those were 2 new ones that I just saw tonight. I can't recall if I've seen those in any other model ordinance. I don't have an opinion on them right now.
the idea is, again, don't make this just one big Amazon warehouse. Let's try to make them a little smaller, more aesthetically pleasing, whatever.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with either of those right now. You guys have
So
reasons
that's-
for putting them in there.
That's 2 acres, right? 80,000?
Yeah, it's a big 2-acre building.
I think we pulled some of that cranberry out of the cranberry other day somewhere. But I couldn't find any benchmarks for minimum. I think we also debated that, are we allowed to tell a person how big building they can build on their lot?
You already have a 60% maximum coverage per lot requirement in your industrial. You are allowed to do that. A specific square footage, I'm a little bit more weary of. I just can't say definitively if you would be allowed to do it. I think if it would be conflicting too heavily with your 60% requirement,
You think it'd be better to have 60% in there than instead of the square feet?
I don't think you need to put it in there at all, because it's already in your industrial,
okay.
but I think it's something to flag, and maybe evaluate with the individual lots and what it would realistically mean. I would wanna do a little bit of that, just to be sure, but
Well, on a small site, 80,000 square feet is still nowhere near 60%. That's the problem.
that's what I was worried about.
Yeah, because you're nowhere near. Because even if we leave it we have 3 or 350 in here, 300 feet.
Can they put 3 buildings, 80,000 square feet each?
Sure, they can.
And that would be 3 buildings on that 10-acre lot. Yeah.
Well, no, they won't get it on 10 acres. That's the point, because as soon as you put a 300-foot
Buffer.
buffer or setback around those, you're wasting, what's an acre and a half deep, essentially, is what you're wasting on the whole perimeter. So you're gonna, if you put a 2-acre site in the middle and you have it wrapped, I'd have to do the math on it, but you've got what, 7 or 8 acres around the outside of a 2-acre piece. So you're what, 20%, 15% kind of number is your coverage. So nowhere near the 60. You'd have to have a very big site, 100 plus acres, to make the setbacks and the 60% actually come to some kind of reasonable agreement. I'm not objecting to the setback or anything. I'm just saying that in practice, you can't get to 60 on these type of sites.
So is that something that they could challenge?
If I were them, yeah. I feel like 80,000 square feet is a big building, but that's just me personally, and not a data center thinking about it. And if you can't get to the 60% otherwise, you might be safer to just leave it out. Unless you have a significant reason for wanting to enforce that 80,000, I might just leave it out for now. But I would definitely flag it to come back to.
It may not belong here, but I've seen some problems where data centers get like half built. And there's a timeline, you know, do we need to put some kind of phase so they have to be completed by X years or something like that? Because it's a big development and much bigger.
What happens when they don't complete them?
Yeah, well, we had the same question with residential communities. You know, bonds and things like that. I don't know how our governing ordinances.
You have 5 years after approval, then approval stays. So if you change your ordinance and do a restriction, then if they don't have it within 5 years, then the approval can go away.
Okay.
And that's really for anything, PRD or.
So there is a time.
There is a time limit.
But the problem is, that's not really the problem. The problem is what happens like in a residential development. It's very risky. That if you start the development and nothing sells and you just don't finish it, now all of a sudden you've got bond money at risk. And the township has a bond money. Township certainly doesn't want to go and pave roads for no good reason. So you've got those issues, and you have similar issues here. You have a half-built building. Is there any bonding to protect the township in those events? I think it's good discussion, but to be honest, I'd like to either just make a note of it and kick the can down the road for a few minutes. Okay. Item number 6, setback 300 feet from the boundary. And this is from essentially, that's a normal occurrence here. This is all other zones. We could reword that as all
Yeah.
That is the list of all the other zones.
Yeah, that's what I was, when I saw this new one, I was like, aside from the conservative, whatever that is called. Conservation, yeah.
7's rather innocuous.
300 feet you're gonna keep?
Oh yeah, good question. 300 feet? What do people think of 300? I personally think that 300 is even still pushing it in terms of whether it can be challenged, but do you think?
I think you're real safe at 300.
Okay. 8, lighting at the site, directed downward.
So my question is, like, because I just see that, like, consignations and stuff. So if they use chemicals like the glyphosate for cooking, I think that definitely has to be posted so when people do have an emergency, they know what these chemicals are. Even if it's harmless chemicals, there's people that have allergies, and if there's a fire or a leak, these people need to run for their life.
So later on down the ordinance, it's further down, there's an entire emergency management. Don't worry, yep, we got you covered. There's emergency management, fire suppression, there will be all of that. If it's not in this draft, I was going to say it needs to be in there. It's usually always there, so no worries.
Yeah, I think back to the separation. When I did the benchmarking, most had 1,000 feet.
What are you talking about?
The
setbacks. Okay.
So this is pretty, you know, more a little bit more lenient.
1,000 feet is a long ways. You have to have hundreds of acre
I bet
sites
you
to
every
make
one
it
I
work.
looked at had 1,000 foot.
Yeah, but you're talking 1,000 or 100 plus acre site just to make that
Get them
work.
on?
Yeah.
I think that's for the hyperscaler.
Yes.
And hyperscalers need 40 acres anyway, so there's no way.
Any issues with 8, lighting directed downward? I did have the comment in there that we do need to have some kind of a measurable number. I was proposing 1 foot candle, but maybe it's some other number.
I've seen 0.
0 is not a good number. 0 is a bad number. Because 0 is pitch black. You will never hit pitch black. Moon itself is brighter than 0. So the problem is you can never hit 0. So I can't in any way see that standing. I can't see 0 ever standing.
What are our other glare? We have sure, certainly somewhere there's gonna be another ordinance provision about glare.
We've talked about it, we have none.
No, I don't think we do.
Not even the solar?
Don't know about that.
Solar usually at least has something.
I don't think we have a solar ordinance.
There is.
You can't build it.
We're not gonna talk about it. We're gonna pretend that's not a thing right now. Because I also thought about that.
Well, that's kind of what ours is. You can build for private, but
Point,
not
0.1 for
commercial.
candles, regularly used.
How bright is 1 foot candle? Someone want to look that up?
Yeah, I'm just gonna look at it for now.
1 foot candle is a very low number.
Like down at Bila, the parking lot there, do you have any idea what that is?
Oh, that's way more than 1.
Yeah.
Way more than 1.
10.76 lux.
Okay?
This doesn't help us.
I think that's something you should come back to.
Or 1 lumen per square foot.
Okay, none of that's helpful.
Yeah, we'll look,
That's
at,
what
we'll look at that one.
I think you should come back to that.
Okay.
I'll
You
research.
can also add redline, something for redline, because there's much less stripping in mice, for example, and you can see red light. And it doesn't affect the circadian rhythm, so that's always helpful.
Okay, buffer yard. We were basically looking at buffer yard as not put it here, but use the buffer yard requirements in the Saldo.
Yeah, and so is that an updated Saldo
No.
reference? Because I couldn't find it on
Correct.
the code.
Well, we have the Saldo pretty well done. It has not gone to the supervisors because we want to give them a package because we know that there's going to be changes between them as we make them. So what we could do for this standalone is take the section of that Saldo that we've already done and just plop it in here for right now. Later, take it back out and put a reference in when the Saldo and zoning are done. And I think that's the safest, quickest way to go in the buffer.
I think it would be the quickest. I do recommend comparing it with other data center buffer yards and the requirements, because a lot of those have really, really extreme detailed what needs to be planted there, how high it needs to be, all sorts of stuff. So I would just compare those, but I do agree probably the easiest to just plug it in there. But again, I haven't seen that one, so I can't say.
I've got some more intelligence on foot candles.
Okay, quickly.
Yeah, storage space has about 5 foot candles. Residence home for lighting is 5 to 40. The sun has 10,000 foot candles. So that's just a relative. I think 1's probably pretty good.
1 it is.
So it'll be the least amount.
Screening requirements. We've gone over this before. I don't see any serious issue with it.
No, it looked pretty similar to the others. I didn't have any comments on that one.
And then the end of that's talking about fencing. Again. D, noise and vibration. obviously noise and vibration are things that we want to definitely have input in and have it measurable. First item of the discussion there is D1, the decibel level. We batted around a variety of numbers. And I saw, I think it was on your AI stuff, a number of 45, I think it was.
It was, yeah, 45
45.
decibel at all times.
And that's 45 at the boundary of the property.
That's like whispering.
45 is low. A conversation, a normal conversation like right here, I think that's in the 55 range. I have a hard time understanding if 45 would be enforceable. I know that you mention in there that someone has it and it should be enforceable, but I'm still very concerned if 45 would be enforceable.
Yeah.
The EPA has a noise control act of 1972 that limits decibels to 55.
Yeah, that's what you can hear.
Is that nothing for the property line?
Okay, and that,
But that doesn't
talk,
address-
Tom, go ahead and talk.
I mean, that's the act, that's the EPA's act. I mean, that's a lot of townships when they come to a nuisance and hearing a noise.
You're varying, the maximum you hit right there at this distance was about 56 to 60. Me right here, I'm at 70, 1 foot. Now, when you talk about property line, it's sort of irrelevant because here we're only 12 feet difference. 45, I think, is going to be extremely tough. That's a whisper at the property line. That's tough. I like the 55 number because it comes from something.
I mean, that's.
Well, and you might be preempting from going any lower.
Okay. Okay.
55, yes.
55. Does that cover vibration?
No, it does not. We haven't really dealt with vibration yet.
Okay.
Are we good with 55 across the board at all times?
So what was the sound study, aspect of that? Is that, do you have to create a baseline to, because there's a whole bunch of, the study that backs the ordinance. Is that all needed? If you have a numerical standard?
Well, I think it's still needed because you need them to demonstrate to you that when they're done, they're going to be within the bounds that you want. Because if they build it and then say, oh, guess what, we can't hit that number that you just proposed.
Oh, this is 6 months after building.
That, I think that's a problem.
As far as 55, if we didn't have the buffer zones and the distances between the buildings and the property line, I'd say maybe we should bump that up during business hours. But I think having all that buffer zone there is going to dissipate a lot of sound. At 55 around the clock is reasonable.
Well, my question with it is, do we separate and have a distinction between, this is under, I'm assuming, this is talking about under normal running conditions. This is not talking about the construction process during development. Because the construction process during development, you're going to have heavy equipment that's running that's going to exceed this during work hours. And I think, Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, but that, if it's not covered, should be covered elsewhere anyway, just as a construction activity. And this should focus purely on running operations.
That's in a different.
It says uses during normal operations.
Okay.
This is during operation, normal operation facility.
And then we added D and E on that, basically allowing the township to conduct more sound studies if necessary, kind of thing. I don't have a problem with D2, that under power outages, the generators can go and run in excess of that. Do we need to have any comments in here about the generators running, hold on a second. Can the generators exceed 55 dB? That's the first question, because according to I here, they can't. So if they can't, then D2 is irrelevant because they can't exceed 55 anyway. Or do we allow the testing and operation under emergency power to exceed that in some way?
I'm inclined to say no. I would say if it's just one of your accessory uses, which is what your power generators are, they should be under the same standards.
Do you know, can that be achieved?
If it couldn't be achieved, you're gonna have a larger issue. Because they're all going to have backup generators or some sort of power generation that a lot of them run more than just emergency too. Are you gonna really define emergency?
Well, I guess I'm just asking because if there is no possibility of a generator on site that can be less than 55 dB at the property line, they can't meet this. We've excluded everybody. If a generator exists or can be shielded, acoustically shielded enough to meet that requirement, then I would say we blow 2 away and we just leave the 55 in as a blank.
I would do that for now. And start off assuming that
they can meet the 55.
They can be.
Okay, so we'll blow 2 away then.
Now, if you think I'm being too harsh, let me know.
I like you.
Because I'm not, I don't want any personal feelings to come across.
So typically generators have 3 noise levels. There's packages that you can put on those that reduce the noise. The lowest noise that they make is 63 decibels.
At the machine.
At the machine.
Correct. And this is 300 feet away from the property line, which is a long ways. Yeah, a long ways.
So I think if you put the inundation panels on at the unit, then you should, by the time you get the property line, you should be okay. Unless it's a valley situation, but again, I think they could put something up a wall barrier, similar to what some of the asphalts do to protect it. So I still think the 55 on the property line works under every situation.
As long as we haven't created a situation that they cannot achieve. Okay.
Should we put this aspect in the emergency section or keep it here in the power?
What aspect?
Here.
Keep it here?
Emergency is it's like a very explicit emergency management. So I'm not worried about
Fire.
noise and those kinds of nuisance
Okay.
things for the generators.
Gotcha.
Okay, here we get into item 3, vibration study. I still have a serious problem with this. It's not that I'm against the vibration, I'm against the non-measurability of it.
I think this needs beefed up.
It does, because we need equipment will be perceptible to the human sense of feeling beyond the property line. What the heck does that mean? It needs to be measurable. Do either of you know of any way to measure that data?
Offhand, I don't.
I don't either.
I'll ask some of our GMs to see if they have a recommendation.
Okay.
You gotta have something like, if you got an earthquake, they can measure it. Some kind of.
Yeah,
I don't want to get to an earthquake level.
But I mean, there's gotta be something that'll measure it.
there is, but
There is. We'll find it.
I can ask someone. I know, I work in building, there's a.
okay.
Built in a way that they don't have vibration.
Okay, so if we can get something in there that's measurable, I'd like to have something in on vibration, but it needs to be quantitative and not just fuzzy.
Yeah, we'll find something.
Okay. Okay, item 4, we put, need a paragraph here to limit the routine cycling of backup power generators. Okay, the question then would be why, if we're limiting them to 55 dB and it meets our criteria anyway. So I would lean towards we don't want that paragraph if we're going to hold them at 55. Okay, moving into E, water and sewer. we had a lot of good discussion earlier about public water. We had discussion about recycling, or closed loops, like glycol-based loops. I don't know where we want to go with this beyond where we're at. Thoughts?
I think for right now, your actual, this one, I would leave it be for now, because right now this is a lot of just what they're gonna have to show us. Rather than an explicit requirement otherwise. So I would leave it like this for now. If we find anything, I wanna do some more research on the actual water stuff to see, if there's anything else we might wanna add specifically. But for right now, I would leave those as is. My biggest concern was the paragraph after that.
Well, before we get to the paragraph after that, let's go to E to I.
E2, okay.
Yeah, no, and I would, both of those,
Because wells should be tested,
yes.
no question.
Yes.
Pre-construction test and then something.
It says within 1,000 feet. Other ordinances we're talking about 3,000 feet. You know, so it's a little bit farther out because of the excessive water use. I just throwing it out, just another number. But
1,000 was the gas industry up where I'm at, and they put it well.
Right.
They did it 1,000.
same with hazardous waste.
I think 1,000 is highly enforceable.
Okay.
It's
I'm just
pretty
saying,
standard.
I'm still gonna just kinda ask the question, if we require water and sewage for our PRDs, why aren't we just requiring water and sewage, public water and sewage for these data centers?
I don't have an answer.
Even if we,
There's no water.
so with this here, we're, say this. Should they test the wells and everything, even if they're using, city water?
Yes.
Yes.
There's a few different impacts. Number one, even the construction impact alone.
Okay,
When I do a development, I often have to test the surrounding wells just to confirm that if I had the dynamite or whatever, that it has not impacted the quantity or quality of those water wells within the radius.
and I guess just what they said, why don't we require them to have city water, city sewage? And I think that's reasonable to me, but they still need to do the testing.
Well,
of
I
the
guess
wells.
I'm good either way, but I guess I question if someone comes in with a closed loop design, a glycol-based closed loop. I know I've had my glycol loops in the ground for 25 years, and I haven't had 1 ounce of any contamination in it. Now the question would be, how do you monitor and regulate that? Because there's no real way to confirm.
So if they have the closed loop system, they don't need water?
Basically, it's a geothermal system that you run, and that's the way I heat my house. Heat and cool my house is geothermal, and we pipe the water through the ground and it comes back up, and that's my heating and cooling.
Like your car.
Yeah, very efficient.
Still need water supply though, right?
You still, but you don't need much. If you're a closed loop, you don't need much. So I could go either way on it. I don't know, and I don't know that, given we have no water or sewer down there, and they really don't need sewer unless they're disposing of water that can't be, surface gotten rid of, stormwater. Why are they any different than any other industrial down there that's running on a well and a septic tank?
Yeah, we can't really discriminate against one industry versus another.
No, I'm just looking at,
I
they're only
guess
gonna have a
what I
couple
would like to
employees.
know is if they're using a well, how much water do they use daily?
I don't think a well would be able to sustain a data center.
No.
That's not gonna
No.
happen.
You're talking 500,000 to 1 million gallons of water minimum a day on a non-closed loop system on a small.
On a non-closed loop, but if there is a closed loop, it's a different
But on
story.
a closed loop system, I can't remember the intervals, but after certain times I have to flush them and then fill them again. Because the glycol now equals eventually, because the amount of water they pump through the pipes.
So lacking more information, I'm inclined to just live with what we have here.
I would
And
live
we
with what
clean
we
this up.
have here, and if anything, add to it. I don't wanna take any of this away. If anything, I'm gonna make it more.
I think the most important thing to me in that whole thing there is having the wells all tested. And then again, it is 1,000 feet.
You know, benchmarking, this seems consistent with others that require a hydrogeologic study, you know, looking at the well distributions,
And I would say honestly,
sampling the wells, in the baseline.
given our area, if we have more wells and more properties that are served by wells than maybe somewhere else, we have more of an incentive to increase this, because it's not, and that wouldn't be seen as, you know, coming down too hard on it. It's just the simple fact that you're in a community that might be affected more than somebody that's in a city where they don't have as many wells. So I think if you wanna increase this and make it.
2,000 feet would be like half a mile, is that correct? That's my math, right?
A little less,
A
but
little close.
30 now, yeah. A little over a third.
Again, these other ones have 3,000.
What's that?
These other ones have 3,000 feet.
I mean, that could be a lot of testing.
That's a lot of testing. Awful lot of
It's a
testing.
nice room.
You know, within a 3-mile radius back there, you know,
Third
half mile radius of the
Well, if they're
of
gonna
the
pull
corners of
500
the property.
If they're gonna pull 500,000 gallons per day, they're center of influence and cone of influence in the neighborhood.
Well, they aren't gonna drill a water well that's gonna get them much water. They're gonna suck it out of a creek, or they're gonna disturb it based on their development activities.
I still wanna know how you get your decibels out of your phone.
Well, that's what.
I have an app.
There's an app, yeah.
The water table.
What was that?
I was just looking if there was anything specific to the water.
No, we do not. And I had never seen anything, because the problem is the water table varies year in, year out.
That's why, like, another comment I had on this, whenever they're talking about they have to show whatever their demand or whatnot, I wanna include that should include seasonal fluctuations. Because that changes.
Meaning what?
So your demand and your impact on the system.
Okay. Okay, yes.
So, well, then another question on the testing of the wells, and I never thought about the season. Should the wells be tested twice or something, spring and fall?
Yeah.
Summer and winter? Because definitely, I mean, fortunately, we've got
What are we
extremely
testing
good
for?
well at home.
Yeah, that's
What are we
that's
testing
see
for?
the
Are we
thing.
testing for chemicals, or are we testing for, yield?
Yes.
What I would
Typically,
do
it's
is,
both.
on your eye here, where it says there's a determination of the effects on the proposed water supply system on the quantity and quality of water in nearby wells and surface waters and ground table, I would add a similar little phrase at the end of that says including seasonal fluctuations, just like we do up at the top. And then you'll be able to cover that. And then you have a more workable requirement. You have a little bit more discretion.
Water quality test can be testing for E. coli. Should we better add specifics, like chemical specifics on the site?
I wouldn't add specifics here, because I don't want to box us in. I want to be able to test for everything.
Typically, these tests would be quantity and quality of water.
That's
And
what
if it
says.
varies after, if the way it normally works, Adams Township has this ordinance, that you test, the developer has to test these wells, and it's done by someone certified. Those results are stored, given to the township. If then someone complains and says,
So this is,
you have affected my well,
This is all
then
conditional.
you go back out, retest, those results are then given, and then two results are compared. If it determines that, oh my goodness, we've got undrinkable water now versus what it was before, or my flow is half of what it was before, remedial action has to be taken by the developer.
That's I think it might be better to keep bylaws about water, because, like glycons, they don't test for glycons usually.
Wait a minute, one more time?
Like, if they use glycons, for example, they don't test them, it's not in the test, they test the water quality. can't show it.
Yeah, but I don't know that you could list everything anyway, I don't know.
So,
The gas company tested 3 pages of.
Oh, very extensive.
Everything. They really want the whole gamut, so there's black over there. Plus you're talking 1,000, up to 1,000 feet away. So
That's something we should be
oh,
aware of.
yeah, it's something
You're
to
not
be
gonna
aware of
provide-
and check, we'll check on definitely, and it might also already be in some areas.
If you have a major spill, yeah, but I mean, a leak, no.
I'm good with the 1,000, but I was just curious, say my well is 1,000 feet away, and they're doing a water yield study, and I'm showing 10 feet of drawdown. I'm in an arbitrary 1,000 feet, so Jimmy has a well 50 feet away, he's not part of this program because 1,000 feet is limited. Should there be some kind of ramp off, so if they find adverse effects?
But they won't know because you won't have a baseline test. You need the baseline test to have a second
Well,
test.
what if there is a baseline and then they do this study and it shows that there's going to be a significant drawdown at 1,000 feet? What happens to the guys and gals at 1,010 feet?
Well,
You know what I'm saying?
but you're not going to get. You're going to have your baseline.
Oh, so they won't
Then
be
they're
able
going to do their construction. Then it'll be tested a second time if someone complains. There's no ability to go back and do a new baseline for your neighbor. You get one crack at doing a baseline.
I'm just, yeah.
So think about it, your industrial area where it's located, that's all well. There is no public water until you get all the way up here to 19. And that's what, over a mile away.
Yeah.
So honestly, if my code flies here, I'm fairly close, we're fairly close to you as well. And the well is just right here in this little section, range from anywhere from a little over 100 feet to well over 600 feet. So, we would probably be covered close to the 3,000 feet from the industrial zone to even come up here.
Okay.
So I'm thinking the 3,000 feet would be much better because of the number of people in the area.
Do we have an inventory? Thanks. Do we have an inventory? Doesn't Pennsylvania DEP publish a list of well holders, or is it? I know it's not always accurate.
Not residential.
It'd probably be easier not to get the houses that have city water,
Yeah.
and everybody else has a well, than the other way around.
Okay, so you think every property
Yeah.
here that has some kind of structure has a well?
Either
Oh, yeah.
well or spring or cistern.
I forget where I live, sorry. I turn on the spigot and splash.
So I'm just gonna note this area as just more research and review before we work on actual language.
And something I just talked to Betty about too is, and we don't know, she just says it's something we do have to look at,
Paragraph on each chart.
is after it's built and running, if wells start going bad, who's responsible for, and what is the responsibility?
Trespass. Just raising legal theory. It just has one paragraph on wastewater disposal here.
I want that third eye,
Yeah,
I would just like to beef it up a little bit more. Right
Agreed.
now, it's broad and comprehensive in a way, but I would just like a little bit more substance too.
okay, how and who? Can you provide us with something for our Monday night meeting?
Monday night,
Because I don't think any of us can come up with anything better.
I'll try, I'll see what I can find. It's Tuesday.
Yeah, I didn't find any wastewater stuff.
I know, and that one's hard too, because it's not gonna have, like, I'm not gonna have a quantitative, kind of scale to put there. It's something that you have to evaluate with whatever report they give you, but I wanna make sure that there's enough there to prevent any inappropriate discharge or disposal. Because that's something I worry greatly about.
Like it's not gonna.
Most of these are going to depend highly on what they come in as a proposal.
Yeah, I know,
That's the
why
problem.
it's kind kind of hard on like what do you actually write in there.
I think one of the things we want to definitely prevent is them going down to the creek, sucking out 100,000 gallon of water a day, using it and pumping it back into the creek. I don't think that's the most appropriate method of working this system. So I think we need to make sure that what we have covers those kind of things. Most of the rest, I think, is going to be reviewing an application as a whole and balancing things. Because remember, it's a conditional use. It requires a hearing, and you can balance all this stuff.
And the PA code does cover wastewater, so you can reference that.
That's what I probably would be added as reference to that. Rather than actually going in and trying to regulate it yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on, because I do want to get through the rest of this and then review what we're missing, more importantly, to know what we need to work on Monday night. Power requirements. Did you have a chance to look at what's written there? Because it's not a whole lot.
Yeah, so the one thing I have about this is, because it was one of my concerns when I was reading that AI review as well, is because your last sentence of this accessory use also says that for it's like it doesn't include this generation of power for normal operations, because those would be considered as a separate principal use. To make sure that if that's how you're going to regulate those, that you actually have regulations on those. That was my number one concern. Because if I say, this thing is going to be governed as a separate principal use by a separate, kind of set of regulations, but we don't have any regulations on it, it's just something to be mindful of. Which is another one of the reasons I asked about the solar thing.
Well, I guess the question related to that is, if you ignore solar, and someone wants to come in here right now and build a coal power plant in the township, can they do it? And how would we control it?
It would be part of your zoning district with your allowable uses.
Correct. So technically, they could come in and propose a coal-fired power plant down in the industrial zone. And we would have something in there. It would be a conditional use. It would require a hearing. Not that anyone's going to do it, but what I'm saying is there is some level of protection in there. It's not much. It's an industrial use. It'd be conditional use, and they'd have to come in and apply for it.
But the not much is what concerns me. Because if you have a giant power plant, depending on what that power source is, I just want to make sure that it is, regulated. Same thing, honestly, if you're going to have a giant diesel backup generator to the size and capacity it's going to be able to keep your data center up and running during an emergency blackout or whatever, I want that generator to meet emissions tests. If you need an air quality control permit, you better show it to me. All of those things. Because I don't want just people to use the data center all encompassing to get out of other little requirements. I just want to make sure it's all there. And not even that it wouldn't otherwise be regulated, because it probably is, like your emissions. We're not actually the regulators of that, that's state or federal. But if I show in my ordinance that you're going to be under this kind of scrutiny, and you best come prepared, maybe you go elsewhere.
Okay, so what are you proposing? Are you proposing a rewrite of this section to include more stuff? Are you proposing a separate ordinance? What do you?
Probably include a little bit more. I don't know about the separate different ordinances, just because I don't know what exists currently.
Because I'm not seeing us working on another ordinance now. So I think that it would be, if we need a little bit more here, we add a little bit more here now, and we live with it until we get to the zoning.
Yeah, I mean, if a public refrigerator meets one to put a generator in, you don't have a standard. So to me, you want a general standard that covers that, not a data center standard.
I don't disagree, but we don't want to write it now.
Correct.
That's the problem.
You might not have to write it now.
I keep on reading the first sentence of item F2. 2I. I can't understand what that means.
Which one? F what?
2, any generation, energy generation, design or use to supply. I don't understand what.
Oh,
So
it
that
means
would be
you-
a primary source.
But if you read it, it says, any power supplied directly to a data center shall not be considered part of the data center use.
Correct, it means it's a separate
It's a
use on the
separate
property.
use.
You can only have one principal use on that property.
I'm just
which is a
wondering
data
if it's not clear to me.
Well, so that's the thing, if you're gonna write this in there, that it's not part of your data center use and it has to be considered as a separate use, do all of your other does your zoning ordinance allow for multiple principal uses?
No. It does not.
Well, then that doesn't work.
No, they'd have to have a separate parcel next to it.
I wouldn't do that. I would, well, I don't know if I would do it. 'Cause
Right?
that
Or
is-
they'd have
that's
to
a
take that
primary-
parcel,
That's
they'd-
your primary source, I guess.
they'd have to take that parcel and subdivide it into two. One for power generation, one for data center. They can do that. It's two uses, two parcels now. So they do have options by which they can do that. I'm personally not against having two uses on one property, but
So-
currently we don't.
Then let's change the original definition at the top to, because right now it speaks to on-site power generation, and that technically isn't on-site, that's
Correct.
separate parcels. So that's the only thing, if we're gonna do it that way, you might wanna take out on-site, but that's a
Okay.
technicality. Other than that, we can probably work that if we want to.
And the nuclear word usually scares people to death. Can we
It
just- Can we
does.
just take that out and just put renewables or any other sort? Why do we have to identify these other sources?
So the other reason you might not need to is because one of those pending pieces of legislation are explicitly about the alternative sources of energy. They are going to require 25% at least renewable energy be produced on site, and they separate out specifically your, nuclear from that, from like solar, wind, or anything else, because they do consider it kind of different. That being said, and that's kind of like on the ordinance we had sent you from a previous one GTN had done, that was amending a larger zoning ordinance that was already pretty comprehensive, but it was also super strict, and I bet in the next year it's gonna be preempted with a lot of those requirements, because so many of those pending bills are gonna regulate all your power supply, your grid connections, everything like that. So as much as I want to go heavy-handed with power supply provisions, I don't want to go too heavy-handed because realistically, you're probably going to be preempted in a short time period. So I'm hesitant to put too much work into that.
So how much change do you think we want to make to this?
Probably don't need to make too much change, to be honest.
Okay.
Definition.
We have broadband, waste management, interference restrictions. Have you seen any of these things in other ones, and do we need them?
I don't know if I've seen them, but before we get rid of them, let me just do a little bit more research.
Because I don't mind having all those in there, even if they're fuzzy at this point. Because again, it's conditional use, and there's going to be talk about it. And the more things we can throw in that have to be talked about, the less desirable we are.
Yeah, that's what I'm fine with that at this point.
Okay.
That's where I would leave those in.
J, emergency management stuff. I know when we had talked before, Tom was going to do a little bit more here, but then everything got put on hold. So I don't know if anything ever got done or if we did any work.
I'll indulge that.
Okay.
Battery storage, PFS.
Where are you at?
Items
2, so you're on J2?
right?
Yeah. unless someone has specific language in some of these things, I think we're pretty good. I do think that we could reference that to Bess and put the definition in that one paragraph.
Right there, I'll take the copy of the freestyle.
Okay.
Yeah, I could say best.
800 feet.
And there are a lot of other standards like NERC and that we can put in there. But you already comply. You have to already comply with all those anyways. Right?
Then on J3, that's rather fuzzy, but I don't know that we care to do much more with it right now.
I think that's fine to leave in, and I think it's fine to be fuzzy because you are gonna have other requirements above it, and that's just kind of a final say that if you don't give us a sufficient enough emergency management plan, you will not get approval. That's no, there's no kind of looking past that, so I think that's fine.
Then we have some aesthetic requirements. Is there any reason these would not be enforceable?
No, I think they're relatively safe. You could probably go even harder.
Right now, I'm looking to be mostly comprehensive on areas we've missed. Access on K2, I think is reasonable. And the parking in L is already in Saldo. And again, we may have to cut that out of the Saldo and paste it here because the Saldo is not approved.
Yeah.
Oh, it's in the existing Saldo anyway.
It's in the existing zoning.
Oh, is it? Okay. Okay. Oh, so it's not Saldo. Okay.
I gave up looking for this part, so.
Okay.
I didn't even try.
Well, I have the note here at the bottom saying 1 parking space per 8,000 square feet of floor area, blah, blah, blah.
That is one that I've seen in other data center ordinances. I don't know what your current zoning ordinance has otherwise, but I bet that's why that was theirs, because it's similar to the other.
It probably came from Penn Future. Is our current parking in the current zoning ordinance?
By use.
What's that?
It's by use.
It's by use,
So
but.
you can easily add that standard to it.
Well, understood, but what I'm saying is since we haven't updated that, should it be added here in the interim until that table is updated with the real stuff?
Or you could add just a line item that says revise this section of the zoning ordinance to add data centers and statistics.
We can do that in this ordinance? And that's not considered any kind of curative amendment to the existing? It doesn't prevent us from making other changes?
So this will be the curative amendment. This will be an ordinance amending the zoning ordinance, but it adds, what it's doing is it's adding a data center ordinance. It gets added to your code ordinance, so it's really the same thing.
But that doesn't prevent us from then doing a new zoning ordinance a few months later?
Yeah, no, it does not. The only thing you can't do is prohibit people from making application during that time while you're working on it. That was the only real benefit of doing the curative amendment, is we could shield any challenges.
Okay. So we've gone through, and I think that's it. The question is, and I think we go back to some of what you and AI did.
Yeah.
And look at what are we missing?
You need a decommissioning section, 100%. These things are not going to last forever and realistically not very long in the grand scheme of time, and you want to make sure that they're taken care of.
So decommissioning section, did you have one in this ordinance that you guys had?
I don't know if I did have one. I just probably didn't. Yeah, there's one.
There is item 6 on page 9. So we could take a fair chunk of this and repurpose it here, I would think.
Yeah, probably.
Okay?
Do we have enough coverage for buffers?
Buffer yard, you're saying?
Yeah. Do we have enough coverage in this?
I think we want to look back again at what our buffer yard language was and see if we need to change
like
it.
Clear cutting and things like that.
Because we don't mention clear cutting. So I do think we want more discussion on buffer yards, and that's probably a Monday night activity again.
that should be beefed up.
Okay, decommissioning. We need that. What else? What else existed in your ordinance that we need to make sure we've got covered?
So, one of the things I liked that, Tom did, whenever he had originally done this, was he went back through, and I don't know what your guys' otherwise conditional use requirements ordinance looks like, but I would compare it with the list that he gives you here. And I'd probably word it a little bit different, instead of just saying conditional use requirements and listing it, kind of something a little bit more comprehensive to summarize other things that we'd be looking for. And that's gonna make sure that you get your air quality and emissions permits, any ecological impact, waste management plan, infrastructure impact, public services impact, visual and aesthetic impact, and your geotechnical analysis. I like that at the end kind of summarizes the list of the goal and what you're gonna have to show us. It doesn't go through your individual, technical requirements, but it gives you the overview of what you're looking at. I just kind of like it, even in like a practical standpoint, whenever you're going through the actual conditional use application.
Tom, what do you think of if we took the conditional use stuff they've got here, those dozen items, whatever, 8 items, whatever it is, cut and pasted that right into here? Any conflict you see in doing that into here?
Correct, because I mean, your standard for your conditional use is you have a general standard and you have specific for the use. That's the specific for the use for gas.
And you still have to
Okay.
Right.
Now, I don't mind having either, because it does make it a nice list right in here.
Yeah, I like it on both sides, honestly, whether I'm on the municipal side or if I'm on the landowner side, the developer side. I think it just makes everything a lot easier for everybody. The other thing is, I'm sure this is already in the ordinance somewhere, but just to make sure that you have to submit all your conditional use applications materials and all of your materials. Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm sure that is already there, that has to be together, but I just want to make sure. Because you'd want to have everything at the same time. No splitting it up. Alright. Those were the biggest things I think I had.
Anything anyone else seeing that we need, that we're missing? And just areas that we're missing that have to be incorporated?
Not compared to what we have.
I think we're in good shape. The only thing AI did to me was said, oh, you're giving this to the supervisors. Maybe you should create some kind of comparative document. So I know it's more work, but you at least show the main salient points of our ordinance and then compare, because we're gonna have to broadcast this to the public. And I don't know if they're in a state of weakness because we're actually showing, where we compare to others, but.
They didn't ask for that. They've been pretty.
Okay, I don't want to create work, I'm just saying that, yeah, I did that for me. I don't know if there's a way to.
Okay, then here's what I'm gonna propose.
Actually, there's one other thing that came up a couple times in some ordinances, like, do we have to do anything about the construction? Like, someone had said that some of the ordinances miss specific things for construction, or are we covered by that just by our normal ordinances?
Bonds and stuff?
What says, like, it says years of truck traffic, blasting, dust, road damage, haul roads,
Those are
like, all
covered
that,
by
is that all
normal
covered?
land
Okay.
development stuff.
Okay. All right.
And I was concerned about the well testing, because I wanted it for both their water usage and for construction activities that could impact wells. But this covers it either way, since they have to do this first.
The only other thing I saw is some communities designate scale of the data center into there's 3 levels, a major, a hyperscale, and then the grid. What's the first one? Edge, an edge data center. And that, if you move up in category, your setbacks and everything become more strict.
It's a tiered system.
Yeah, so that's what a lot of communities are looking at, so that they treat different parties, groups of people, depending on what kind of development they're going to do.
I actually think that's a reasonable strategy, but I don't think it's a necessary strategy for us.
I was thinking, I love the strategy, I just don't know for this area, this community
It's just going to get
necessary.
too complex.
Yeah,
I think we're gonna
prefer to kind of go with it as if, it was gonna be a large one, and then anybody smaller just has to meet it.
Yeah, okay. No, I was just raising the comparison.
Now, if on the other hand, we had proposed that this be a conditional use in R1 and R2, then I would want to do some of that, because you do have ground that you can have some of these bigger data centers. But I don't know that it's necessary.
Yeah, I don't know. I have a note on it still, because there were a couple specific areas where people were using tiers that I did kind of like, but I still was not convinced that we needed to go that far. I kind of figured it would complicate it more than we needed to, because especially when I keep going back, we're working with such a small available area. Pros and cons to doing a tiered system. Tier system would allow you to go smaller and have smaller requirements, that would open up more of this to data centers, but that's not really our goal.
Well, it's actually, I think ours is on a rather small end anyway.
Yeah, well, that, exactly.
Yeah, so we're already on the small end, and on the hyper end, we don't have anything suitable anyway,
Yeah,
so.
they wouldn't be able to do that, which is why I think we just kind of stick with it as a kind of a one blanket.
Okay.
Oh, is that what you're feeling?
Have you?
Yes, we can fix all this in the zoning ordinance when we
If you want.
redo the
We
zoning.
keep going that way, just fix them.
Well, we can, and I'm fine with that approach. But, okay, so to wrap this up then, Monday night, we're gonna be back on this. I'm gonna propose, I'll take and make edits to this document. I'll probably send them to you, Tom, so you can review if I missed some of the stuff that I didn't take notes on or whatever. And then from there, and I'd like to do that ahead of the meeting. And then, if you want to give me your email address, I can email you or I can email Michelle. I don't care. It doesn't matter. I can include Michelle on it. Because if you can have your comments as well, give me a couple paragraphs of where you were going to put some stuff in. I'd like to have a document in place Monday night that's got edits in it. Red line of what we've got. So that then we can go back through it and start tuning those numbers. And then we'll have further discussion on buffer yards, because I do think buffer yards need more discussion, whether it needs to be pulled and copied here, because it's not done yet, or whether we need to beef it up to put it in here. Something more, additional discussion on buffer yards in this context. I think when it all comes down to the final zoning product, that'll all be pulled back out and put in where it belongs. But in the interim, it might have to be put in here.
I would leave it in here even after we do, because even if you would update your other regular industrial zoning stuff, you would still want a specific section for your data center, so I think it's fine to remain there regardless.
Have you seen any movement towards eminent domain use and securing the property for data
For
centers?
data center, no. I do eminent domains, and if a client ever came to me and said, I want to do this for this reason, I would tell them no. I would say in the future maybe, if things really got to that point.
Especially because utilities are starting to get in the game too, so they're saying, hey, I'm a utility.
Yeah.
Eminent domain,
I don't think they're there yet. Well, yeah, so Georgia, and then Texas is another really interesting state. If you are watching stuff, the data work and stuff going on. Georgia, Maryland, Virginia, and Texas are probably the big ones that I look at. I don't think we are there yet. I think there's too much pushback, but I wouldn't say in the future that it wouldn't go there. I'm also kind of hoping though that by the time they do go there, that this dies down, which is another reason for the decommissioning stuff. Because there's a lot of theories that, in 10 to 15 years, these are going to be next obsolete anyway.
Absolutely.
So, hopefully by the time people
Are they building these more in areas where there isn't that much zoning or?
Exactly.
Because I know in Indiana County, I know two pretty good sized farms that have been sold for, and the reason, and you had said about to build them where there's a population, there's no population in Indiana County except Indiana, but you're building a new power plant down there. They tore the old coal plant down.
Palmer City.
Hmm?
Palmer City.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's done.
The plant,
Kiewit's building, yeah.
It's done now?
I think it's almost done.
Yeah, it was quite
I mean,
bad.
no, it's
I don't know if it was quite that, I mean, there's trucks running in and out there, but anyhow, I just know that there's farmers down there talking about other farms that's, guys have sold for big money.
If you can get the infrastructure built there in an area where there's low zoning requirements or it's not as strict for a
Public.
remote data center, that's where you're gonna go.
Public.
Well, that's even, I mean, locally, I don't think Money Creek Township has any zoning, do they?
I don't think they do, no. I'm
That's
pretty sure
what,
they
my
do.
brother lives there, that's what he said. There's no
Pretty sure they
zoning
do.
there.
You just have to run faster than the other guy. That's it.
I'm just saying.
That's where we're at.
It's not, they wouldn't have to go too far from
That's right.
here to not have.
That's right.
So, and you said it exactly, we wanna have it, that they can do it, but we wanna make it such a pain in the ass. that
They
Yeah,
don't want
that
to.
they go up to somewhere else. Yep, absolutely. Okay, you want to take over?
Yeah, so public comments?
I have a couple of things. One, just so everybody with the setback, so you have an idea, like 300 feet. From 19 to the entrance of the parking lot, here's 366 feet. So that's pretty close, and you get a lot of noise from 19, especially January and everything else. Between the entrance and exit here of the parking lot, it's 105 feet, so it's not that far. And usually 100 feet, people think it's real far, that's really not that far. So when it comes to setbacks, keep that in mind. To the tone of voice, that and vibrations, they've tracked as far as 14 to 15 miles from site. So just keep that in mind too. Also, nothing was mentioned, I don't know if you want to mention it, but something in the back of your mind, is the residential data centers, we're putting them on houses.
Yeah.
The size of a air conditioning unit.
Well, I don't know if we'll be able to.
That would be a different code.
It's all done.
Okay.
Does the fact that probably 75% of the homeowners in Lancaster Township have well water, does that in any way discourage people from coming, or is there any way to protect the 75% of us? And maybe more than that, who have wells.
So are you worried about if they come in and they build a water line extension that you have?
I am worried about that.
Okay.
And I'm also worried about the quality of the water depending on what they do. Because as far as I can see, Lancaster Township, excuse me, has no real source of water. We don't have the Conquenesson Creek coming through. We don't have, we don't have water. We have wells. And I love my well, and I love that I don't have to pay a bill. And I love that my water is better quality than Coal. And I want to protect that. And I don't know if it seems to me as though you guys are making every effort to protect that. And I am so grateful for me and everybody else of the 75% who have wells. And so I say
So
thank
for
you.
me, one of the reasons, and I like it for other reasons, but I like the PRD, because it does require city water. Because if somebody has a 100-acre parcel and it's R1 right now, you can put 50 houses on it, 50 more wells. You do that on 500 acres in the township, multiply that, you got 250 more wells. I can guarantee you there's people gonna have dry wells.
And water table's going down.
Develop issues after residential developments are added next to them too.
Could be, I mean,
And I can tell you that for a fact. And nothing was done by this township to protect those residents' items, no testing done or anything.
well, we're trying to avoid that claim now.
Yeah, I know now, it was supposed to have been done when Steve Bridge was done by in 2008, was started, but that all got thrown out the window.
Could we take a risk and prohibiting groundwater use?
We talked about at the beginning, we could do that.
I
Legally.
think you have an argument to go more heavy-handed on it. You might want to have like a written or developed analysis of your current basin and your watershed and your well usage and you kind of location of everything. If you get like a kind of a geographic layout of what your specific area is looking at, you can say, yeah, we didn't use a model ordinance that every other city is using because we were taking into consideration our specific characteristics of our community. So you could go more heavy-handed with it.
Could you do like a prohibition, except if you do a professional hydrogeologic study and show that there's
Yeah.
gonna be no impact?
And that is probably what I would
And then that requires a lot of proving,
Yeah.
you know.
I think it does do that.
Geotechnical with groundwater studies, who approves that? Do we have any authority there to say, no, whatever you've done, you haven't passed that test? If they come in and say, we can pump 1,000 gallons a minute, or,
They would have to meet the accepted standards. They couldn't just come in and say, we're fine.
right?
We did a test and it said we were good. It would have to be something actually, that you could verify.
Who
And that's
determines good? Is that us? Is that the state? Is that,
It wouldn't necessarily be us because we would be using higher up standards. We wouldn't create our own necessarily.
we have to cite that in there. That they have to, if they do a groundwater study, it has to meet a certain criteria, or, and we can make that really strict.
You could specify which, criteria you are using. I'm not familiar enough with the individual criteria to name one.
I think it says it's done by a licensed professional for the study.
Whatever the study is gonna have to be reviewed anyway, and it's gonna be part of the consideration process in the conditional use. Tom would end up reviewing it, and he may end up,
Tom,
but he may end up sending it off to an actual hydro.
You already have that stated in your salvo for land developments and subdivisions where they use private wells and creating, you already have all that stated out.
Yeah, and I don't know that we need to change any of that. I know when we were actually looking to have our own water company, we drilled wells, we had testing, flow, quantity, air, all kinds of stuff, and there was extensive engineering on that. And it wasn't just our engineering, it was reviewed engineering.
I do have a question on the industrial area, the 1,000 feet or 2,000 feet or whatever. Do we have any idea how many homes? I mean, I don't think there's like a lot of homes down there.
That's what I was saying. Can we figure out how many wells are in that area?
Do you have an easy way to do that, Tom?
Well, we could look at the
Number of structures.
and see the homes, but there's only a handful of those.
Because it would actually be nice if we could have the zoning map and do 1,000 foot around the outside. Just take that and do a poly line 1,000 foot away, and then offset that with another 1,000 foot to get 2,000 feet. And just, even if it's physically count the number of homes you see, a number of structures you see.
Could Sally Record get that information for you as the tax collector?
The issue, she could get you what homes exist where, but she can't give you if they're in a perimeter.
Or if they use
We need a poly line on a CAD drawing.
I just know down in there are not.
There's not.
It's not like Scott Ridge Road or Wadestown.
And it could be that 2,000 feet is fine, that there's still not an exorbitant number, and we bump this range up to 2,000 feet or something. But you have a couple poly lines on the thing and count the number of structures in it.
It's still like 3,000 feet.
It could be, and depending on what Tom comes up with, it
So
could
how
be that he says,
far, like, if you, from 70, how far is it
It goes
from
to
79
19.
up to 19? How many feet? Was that a half a
Basically,
mile?
there's one house on it.
I don't know.
Yeah, is that it? Those are pretty big plots.
Really?
That's beautiful land out there.
3/4 of a mile.
So that big one is,
I'll find it
the total of that is
Like 7
97 acres. It's split down that middle though. That was one of the biggest chunks that are available for that. That one in the top right, it looks like it's split zoned, and it kind of is a little bit at the top, but there actually, on the GIS, there is a parcel there around that outline of that valley. Yeah, cause at first I thought it was split zoned all the way around, but there is a separate parcel right there. And I think that one is 20 to 25 acres, if I'm not mistaken.
Gannett did our study, right? Is there a plan to update that ever? Because I think that goes to 2030.
Well, the township could update it in 10 years.
Are they gonna wait 10 years?
What, the comp plan you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They can do that.
It just seems like an odd industrial area. It just, personally, it's kind of like, oh, that's industrial area? I would
Is this
never-
proposed from the comp plan? Is that what we're saying, or is this current?
That's existing.
Current, okay. I know we did some changes in the comp plan proposal, which we're out discerning there yet.
I have another question for these data sets. Isn't that all strip ground down in there?
Yeah.
It is.
Down at the corner of East Lancaster and Little Creek, most of that area all the way to 79 has the abandoned mines on it.
Wait a minute, from where? East Lancaster and Yellow Creek, you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, not Little Creek, okay.
This area.
How deep are they, Connie? How deep are they?
I don't know that.
Surface mines or deep?
No, deep shaft mines. Up closer to 79, that was all strip mines.
Moving color?
Huh? Well, I don't know if you see it now. It used to be you drive up 79, you look to your right, and it was all
Does Butler County not?
sulfide.
Yeah.
I was gonna say it would.
All right, we have a motion.
I know.
I moved
Okay,
it.
we're running short on time.
I gotta go.
You two ladies, do you have any comments? Anything?
I've already made my comment. Thank you.
Are you guys comfortable with what we've been doing? You think we've given it a really hard look?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
And this young lady this is the first time I've heard her at a meeting, and she's very impressive, and obviously.
I want to commend you. You've done an astounding amount of work on this.
And we appreciate it.
Okay, well, thank you. With that, I'm gonna
Move we adjourn.
move to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?